You might think your LLC protects your personal assets, but if an attorney decides to pierce it, that protection can disappear fast. With just one mistake, they can come after you personally, not just your business. Your house, your savings, and even your investments could all be on the line. The truth is, most business owners have no idea how easy it is to get this wrong. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how attorneys pierce the corporate veil, and more importantly, how you can make sure it doesn't happen to you. Let's start with a question I get all the time. Can a lawyer actually sue me personally through my LLC? That's a question I get often. And the short answer is yes, they can. Now, it doesn't happen automatically, and they can't just do it because they want to. But under the right circumstances, court could ignore your LLC and go straight for your personal assets. This is called piercing the corporate veil, or in California, we often refer to it as the alter ego doctrine. I'm Ali Talai, a trust and asset protection planning attorney and founder of Talai Law Offices here in California. And I help real estate investors and business owners protect their assets, because a properly run LLC is powerful, but a sloppy one might as well not exist. All right, so let's talk about what is piercing the corporate veil. When you form an LLC, you're setting up a legal wall between your business and your personal finances. That's what limited liability means. But here's the problem. That wall only works if you build it properly and maintain it. If a court finds that you're treating your LLC like it's just an extension of yourself, they can say this LLC is in real protection. And once that happens, you're personally liable for business debts, lawsuits, and even judgments. This isn't just theory. It happens, and it's called piercing the corporate veil. Luckily, California courts consider this an extreme remedy, but they will use it if justice requires it. In California, courts use a two-part test to determine whether to pierce the corporate veil. First, they look for what they call a unity of interest. This means there is such a blending between you personally, the LLC has essentially lost its separate identity. Second, they must find that treating the LLC as a separate entity would promote injustice or protect fraud. Unity of interest is where most LLC owners get into trouble, often without even realizing this thing. The same virtues that make the limited liability company an attractive entity choice for investors, the limited liability and a fewer required formality, also makes it susceptible to management choices that may jeopardize the liability shield normally provided for its members and managers. Let me give you a real example. I was working with a client who owned several rental properties through an LLC. On paper, everything looked fine. He had the LLC set up correctly. The properties were titled under the name of the LLC. The filings were up to date. But during our asset protection review, I found that he was using the LLC's bank account to pay for personal groceries, his kids' school tuitions, and even family vacation. When I asked him about it, he said, well, I own the LLC, so isn't all of the assets in there mine anyway? And that kind of thinking could have cost them everything. If a tenant ever sued, say over a slip and fall, those personal charges could be used as evidence that the LLC is just his alter ego. And once that happens, a court could hold him personally liable for the claims. All right, so let's talk about most common ways LLCs lose protection. Commingling funds is probably the most frequent way I see LLC lose liability protection. When you use your business account for personal expenses or deposit personal income into business accounts, you're essentially telling the world that there is no real separation between you and your business. Courts interpret this as evidence that the LLC is just an alter ego of you. Undercapitalization is another major factor. If your LLC doesn't have sufficient assets to cover its potential liabilities, courts may view this as an attempt to shield assets while avoiding responsibilities. This doesn't mean your LLC needs millions of dollars in a bank account, but it should have reasonable capitalization relative to the risk of the business. Let's say you own an LLC that manages a fourplex. Each unit rents for, let's say, $2,000 a month. So now you're bringing in about $8,000 a month in gross income. But the LLC has only $3,000 in its bank account and no reserve for repairs, legal claims, or emergencies. Now, imagine a tenant slips and falls and sues for $250,000 in damages. If the court sees that your LLC had no real assets or insurance to cover even a fraction of that potential liability, it may view the business as just a shell set up to protect your personal wealth while avoiding responsibility. And that's when the courts may decide to pierce the corporate veil and hold you personally liable. The point isn't that your LLC needs a huge cash reserve, but it should be reasonably funded based on the scale and the risk of the business. Another common way LLCs lose protection is the failure to maintain corporate formalities. This can be deadly to your liability protection. While LLCs don't require as many formalities, thank God, as corporations, they still need a basic structure. You need separate books, separate bank accounts, and clear distinction between personal and business finances. This becomes even more critical if you are a single member LLC because courts tend to scrutinize these closely, and while California doesn't require a written operating agreement, not having one can seriously weaken your defense if you ever sued. A customized and comprehensive signed operating agreement, yes, make sure you sign your operating agreement, shows you're treating the LLC like a real business. It's one of the strongest ways to prove you're doing things the right way. And I have never heard a judge say you were too organized. All right, so let's talk about how you could strengthen your LLC's protection against veil-piercing lawsuit. The good news is that protecting your LLC's liability shield isn't rocket science. It may feel like it, but it's not. It requires consistent attention to detail. First and foremost, maintain completely separate finances. Your LLC should have its own bank account, its own credit card, its own bookkeeping. Never, and I mean never, use business funds for personal expenses or vice versa. Keep detailed records of all business activities. This includes board resolutions for major decisions. Make sure any contract that you enter into, it's under the name of the LLC. Make sure the document is clear that you're acting on behalf of the LLC, rather acting personally. And when you sign contracts, make sure you're signing as a member or the manager of the LLC and not in your individual capacity. Maintain adequate insurance coverage for your business activities. While insurance won't prevent veil-piercing claims, it demonstrates that you're operating the business responsibly and taking potential liabilities seriously. This can be important evidence that you're treating the LLC as a legitimate business. File all required state documents on time and keep good records. In California, this includes filing your statement of information every 2 years. Corporations file it every year. LLCs file it every other year. And make sure you pay your annual franchise tax. These might seem like minor administrative tasks, but failing to stay current with state requirements can be used as evidence that you're not serious about maintaining the corporate form. So what happens when the veil gets pierced? When a court pierces the corporate veil, the consequences are severe and immediate. Your personal assets become available to satisfy business debts and judgments. This could include your home, personal accounts, bank accounts, investment accounts, and other valuable property that you may have. But keep in mind, the LLC doesn't just disappear, but its protective function is eliminated for that particular case only. It's important to understand that the veil piercing is typically applied on a case-by-case basis. Just because a court pierced the veil in one lawsuit, it doesn't automatically mean your LLC protection is gone forever. However, the same factual patterns that led to veil piercing in the first case will likely be problematic in a future case. Prevention is your best strategy. The key to stopping attorneys from suing you through your LLC is prevention. Just forming an LLC does not automatically provide limited liability protection. In order for limited liability to exist, the business owner must operate their business, their LLC, correctly so that the corporate veil that provides the limited liability is not pierced. This means establishing proper business practices from day one and maintaining them consistently. It's much easier to operate your LLC correctly from the beginning than trying to fix problems after a lawsuit has been filed already. By the time you're in a litigation, in most cases, the damages to your corporate formalities has usually already been done, and there's not a whole lot you could do at that point. Understanding how to protect your LLC from veil-piercing claims isn't just about avoiding lawsuits. It's about giving you the confidence to operate your business, knowing that you have built proper safeguards around your personal assets. When you know your LLC is properly structured and it's operating, you can focus finally, hopefully right from the get-go, on growing your business rather than worrying about potential liability. And if you're serious about protecting more than just your business, like your home, investment, and what you will pass on to your family, I'm hosting a free webinar called The 5 Biggest Estate Planning Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. In this webinar, I will walk you through the common traps that leave families vulnerable to probate, taxes, and unnecessary stress, and what you can do to avoid them. It is free to attend, but you do need to register to save your spot. And to do that, you can visit our website, talailaw.com, or just click the link in the description below. If this video was helpful, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you have questions. Now, protecting your LLC is just one piece of the asset protection puzzle. While properly operated LLC can shield you from many business liabilities, there are other strategies that can provide even more comprehensive protection for your wealth. One of the most powerful tools available is the proper use of trusts. But I see clients make critical mistakes in this area all the time. These trust mistakes can completely undermine years of careful planning and expose you to risks you probably never knew existed. In my next video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 most dangerous trust mistakes that could cost you millions. These are mistakes I see even sophisticated investors make, and the consequences can be devastating. You need to watch that video to make sure you're not making these same costly errors with your estate planning. I look forward to seeing you over there.